Welcome to the iLearn Conference, as well as the Oregon State University Moore Family Center for Whole Grain Food, Nutrition and Preventive Health 2021 Oregon Nutrition Update Keynote, entitled Innovation with XR for Health and Mindfulness. I am Susan Wong, the Interim Endowed Director at the Moore Family Center, who gets to work with an amazing team. Today, my team wears a midsummer flower headpiece. So wave, please, my team. You see them around the corners of this room. If this is the first time you ever attend an Avatar conference, especially our nutrition educators, please wave using the F1 key. The OSU uh, members, welcome to, and new friends, thank you for being here. Let me turn to the second slide. On the left screen. See. Well, when we look at the positive things in difficult time, amazing things can multiply, such as having two keynote speakers. Haha. This year, we are excited to have two highly respected leaders in nutrition education and XR communities. Dr. Pam Koch, please wave, is president of the Society for Nutrition, Education, and Behavior. Executive Director of Laurie Tisch Center for Food, Education and Policy, and Research Associate Professor at the Teachers College at Columbia University. Our next keynote speaker is Maya Georgieva. Please wave. She is Director of Education, Future, and XR and HCI Innovation Labs at the New School, and Chair of iLearn Emerging Futures Lighthouse. Well, most of you may know in 2011, a beautiful couple, Bob and Charlie Moore, they actually met on a blind date in 1952. And fast forward, later they founded the Bob's Rack Mill, and they gave generously to establish the Moore Family Center at Oregon State University. Our mission is to help individuals and communities live healthier by bridging the science of whole foods and nutrition to its practical application in the community. We value multidisciplinary collaboration. My research, teaching, and outreach work connects me with the Immersive Learning Research Network's founder and president, Dr. Jonathan Richter. Please feel free to wave. He has a vision for the innovation garden for multidisciplinary practitioners, designers, and makers to innovate together. Which initiative interests you? Planting the seeds, cultivating healthy growth, or fruitful production? Jonathan and I see the growing opportunities in this garden. So here, we are taking a new endeavor with you in this Avatar conference to hear about how we can introduce you and we can innovate with XR for health and mindfulness together. So with that, let's clap by hitting F4 to welcome our speakers. And for those who arrive here, we want you to participate in this raffle prize where you would answer two questions in the chat. The first question is, what is one unprocessed food you have in your home? And what does this food mean to you? And we will do a raffle drawing at the end of the session. So without further ado, let's put our hands together with F4 to welcome our speakers. Welcome, Pam and Maya.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the invitation, and it's really amazing to be able to speak at this forum and not only speak about XR, but to connect with the amazing work of the center does, and also with Dr. Pamela Koch, who is, with whom we've had a conversation over the last month of actually how our fields can work more effectively together in the future. And we hope throughout this session to actually really demonstrate to you this ongoing conversation and inspire you for you to have a conversation in your organization, on your campus, about the opportunity that exists within nutrition education and extended reality. But first, we wanted to make sure that we are all on the same page. And this is a field that is just rapidly evolving, but there's lots of people just really entering the field as we speak because of these new opportunities for learning. And so, what I'm going to do next is um, provide a little bit of a primer, as I mentioned, of how we use the vocabulary, which is emerging and changing, and what are some of the potential of this new medium. And so let me begin by saying that first we think about this, that extended reality is really an umbrella term, or XR, for a number of different opportunity that exist. And the first one is virtual reality. You put on a headset and you're transported into a digital world that oftentimes is rendered on a computer engines, and sometimes could be a true replica of the physical world. And then we have 360 videos, and 360 videos is actually something that can be, you can bring a 360 camera into the world and take pictures. You can go out in the forest, in the fields. You can be on the Great China Wall and be able to actually capture this experience and then bring it in, and share it with others through one of the most inexpensive things is something, a Google Cardboard, where you can use your mobile phone just on the picture you see on the screen, but you can also bring this 360 experience into a virtual reality headset. So like some of you may be familiar, like the Oculus Quest or the HTC Vive. And next we talk about augmented reality, and that is something that today we use our mobile phone to view augmented reality, oftentimes by waving our mobile phones and being able to discover digital assets on top of the physical world. And those could be assets that are navigational, those could be assets that add additional information, or purely actually delight us. Um, Today, we experience augmented reality through our phones, but in the near future, we are actually going to have them in our eyeglasses, like companies like Facebook and Apple and actually all across the world are working on various prototypes on making augmented reality and packing it into a device that will be no different than the glasses we use today to augment our vision. And the next word is a much more recent word, mixed reality. It comes really into research from not from really the last decade. Today is most often introduced by Microsoft and a kind of a newer company called Magic Leap. These are the two companies who actually have the two mixed reality headsets. What's different about these headsets is that they are indeed today bulkier than just our normal eyewear, but they do have a number of different sensors on top of them, and they're see-through glasses. So through them, you see actually the physical world. But on top of the physical world, you see holograms. But what's also on these glasses, as I mentioned, is a number of different cameras and sensors, and they're able to actually create a map of the physical world where they can, where the holograms or digital assets can interact with in a much more seamless way. So what happens that the physical world and the virtual world coexist, and how that's demonstrated? Well, think about as you see that elephant toy walking across the desk. What happens in mixed reality when that elephant toy reaches the end of the desk? Instead of continue to walk in thin air, it will know that is the edge of the table. I better jump down if I continue to walk. And this is kind of the seamless opportunities that exist and will be present in our near future with immersive technologies. So as I mentioned, wanted to just give you a little bit of a primer of what exists today. Now, let me talk a bit more about virtual reality, because this is a different space. It is when you put on a headset, you actually step into the experience. You're no longer just viewing something passively. You are experiencing. You are a participant in that experience. And at that point, that experience when you feel that opportunity for immersion, um, you actually experience the sense of presence. And the sense of presence makes you feel that you are actively participating rather than passively watching. This is why we call these things, this format experiences. We don't call them movies or films because they are in them the most powerful feeling of immersions in the sense of presence. We experience fear, we experience delight, our palms may sweat when we are actually put in some dramatic experiences, and so we have the same physical reactions that we actually experience in the physical world. And at the highest opportunity to create it, to experiencing in these virtual environments, it's actually agency. And in simply put, agency is the ability to do something in the experience, to interact or react rather than simply perceive. So, for example, in other forms of media or movies, the director has oftentimes tweaked or modulated the composition, the length, the color, the sound. Every shot or every scene is ushered as through the specific vision of that director's about a story. But in virtual reality, you are actually story living. You are into the experience and you are able to make decisions and face consequences and experience it as a first from a first person experience. So when people actually visit sites in virtual reality, they tend to remember them as I was there, which is a very different experience from something that you've just watched on the screen in the format of the movie. All right. And so next, in virtual reality, we have also embodiment. And embodiment is actually the opportunity to really feel your body moving in space. And that really is links to the idea of embodied cognition. And it's really the idea that you are not just that you're doing, that you're moving in space. Um, and you have a full body experience, which is a much more increased engagement compared to just being just using a mouse and a keyboard, or just viewing something on the screen. With that comes a lot of opportunities and a lot of different levels of engagement. All right. So, what are some ways to think about learning in virtual reality? What are some ways to think about it is basically by experiencing different phenomena or events, and that is the idea that you can both experience in them in a sensory way as well as in a visual or multi-dimensional way. So they're very good to understand, complex subjects. They're very good to role play, to embody a character, to step into a story, to be faced with different levels of narratives in virtual worlds, to create, to construct new forms. There we have also the ability to tour things, to virtual trips. You can go to remote places, you can be together, you can even experience sites and places where you normally cannot go, like you can scale down to the shape of an ant, or move in and observe a phenomena that happens on the level of a cell, or um, or move to sites that we are not even able to visit, like Mars. So there's lots of different opportunities, but one of the things today that also we see as a even experience in this conference is the opportunities to connect, to foster social and creative and learning collaborations regardless of space. And what also this allows us is though to actually embody avatars. And really, what I some of the things about embodying an avatar and some of the research that goes today is even though we're embodying an avatars that might look, take shape of a cartoon characters, when we actually perform actions in these virtual worlds and then come back, and we adopt behavior in the virtual worlds, that actually behavior translates into the real world. We some of that, and of course this raises a lot of different and critical questions, but it's very interesting that already studies are showing us that you adopt certain perspective, or that level of embodiment in virtual worlds, they actually translate into the physical world. And this is one very interesting study that I want to point out and talk about the Proteus effect, the impact of avatars on behavior. So, for example, and it's really fascinating. In Stanford University has done a number of extensive work on what is known the Proteus effect, a phenomenon in which the behavior of an individual within virtual world is changed by the characteristics of their avatar. So, and for example, researchers found that when they studied participants who saw their own avatars running were more likely to exercise after they left the virtual world or the lab than participants who saw somebody else's avatar exercising, or somebody else just hanging out. And so this is a really interesting phenomena that if we just even see ourselves in virtual reality can have and performing certain task that can have an impact on the physical world. And finally, I want to kind of conclude that session on sort of connecting what's happening in extended reality to what maybe developments that are interesting to follow in nutrition education is the idea of that again, how we perceive and see ourselves in virtual worlds. So in VR environments, you can, for example, if you can encounter another version of yourself, and that was another study which put students, 20-year-old students, into seeing themselves and participating in their future self. And as students were put into different avatars, they actually, for example, taller or different shapes and skin types, and they actually acted differently. In some cases, not surprisingly, people who were in tall avatars that actually started to act more confidently. So, but that also translated when they come to the real world. They felt this kind of renewed confidence. And that is being actually studied in the way people negotiated, for example, different life choices, or even in terms of their performance and workspace. And so this is really interesting when you encounter, being able to kind of use virtual reality almost as a time machine and peek into the future. And in some cases, when people saw themselves in the future, they also started making different decisions today. So they actually wanted to live more healthy. They wanted to save more. They were making really interesting new life decisions that impact their well-being, their health, and their careers. So with that, I wanted to really introduce you to some developments in virtual reality that I think may have an interesting, impact on nutrition education. And I want to also introduce Pam, who will connect into some of the existing work within digital spaces with nutrition education, and we'll then move into our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Maya. That was such a fabulous overview. I learned a lot too, because I am certainly a novice in learning in virtual reality every day. So this is just wonderful. And I want to thank Susan for having us today and being able to be here from Teachers College as well as from the Society for Nutrition, Education, and Behavior. So Maya, if you could go to the next slide. This is actually a review study that is on nutrition education and how it is moving into virtual reality. And you can see Susan is the lead author on this, being the last author on this paper. And you can see it's going up. There are more and more articles on this, which is super exciting. And what we hope is going to come from this session today, that more and more people will be working in virtual reality in nutrition education. And I love this one quote from this paper: XR in the field of nutrition education and behavior change is a burgeoning approach. So we hope that all of us can use this. And if you go to the next slide, this just shows you how it is being used right now. So it is being used for nutrition education and behavior change, which is one of the key things we want to do in nutrition education. We want people to actually be able to eat differently. And then if you see in the middle one, these are the different parameters that it's used for. So diet, knowledge, self-efficacy, which is people's confidence, their experiences and behaviors. And then finally, most of it now is on the computer and on mobile apps. And I'm sure that in the future, those other sections, such as head-mounted devices, glasses, utensils, are all going to be increasing in the future of what we do. Now, if Maya, you want to go to the next slide, I want to take a step back. There's actually been two different virtual reality programs that have been put together and have really used the best of theory-based nutrition education, which is how do we understand why people eat what they eat, how they develop healthy habits, and putting it together. So this first one is by a group out of Baylor in Texas, and it's a serious video game that was used all of the science, and it was called Escape from Diab. So these are the authors of a paper about this, just so you could see. So if you go to the next slide, what was really the big picture is that you could use a video game, right? And then this could actually have then lead to mediators, which is what people learn, the skills that they do, the self-efficacy they develop, and those would end up leading to, in the real world, behavior changes in terms of what people eat, so people are eating differently, as well as physiological changes, which means people getting healthier. So if you go to the next slide, then this just shows a little bit more complicated way that this all ends up going together. So you could see how the game goes with behavior change and then goes to those mediators, and then the specific outcomes of eating more fruits, vegetables, drinking more water, being more physically active, and how that all comes together. So then if you go to the next slide, this is some photos from this. And again, this was developed about 10 years ago. So it's actually isn't even able to be working anymore because of how the coding changes. But you could see this is a world where there was all these advertisements for all of these crazy ultra processed foods. And then this was a game that you could see the colored photo that was to understand the energy in fruit punch. And then I was involved in developing, and by the way, this was done with a government funded grant. So still possible to get government funded grants to do these kind of games. So if you go to the next slide, I was involved in developing another game that was called Creature 101. And what Creature 101 was also a behaviorally focused game for middle school students. And you can see it wanted them to do more fruits and vegetables, water and physical activity, less processed snacks, sweetened beverages, and screen time. And it also had a theoretical component, and it was basically in this world that you can see in that picture on the bottom. And basically everyone was caring for a creature that was having unhealthy habits, because Murphy, who was a teenager, had brought all of this stuff into the world, like video games and soda and candy, and the creatures loved them and couldn't get enough of them. So if you go to the next slide, this shows a lot of screenshots from this game and the kind of interactions that the students had in the game and what they did. And it did lead to the middle schoolers changing their behavior. Actually, it was based off of a science curriculum, and it took fewer sessions in this game, because the students were having one-on-one interaction with the game and with their creature to lead to the same behavior change that more lessons in a classroom environment took. So I think that's a super exciting way to think that when you are actually, as Maya was saying, immersed in these experiences, feel like you're experiencing this. And this was nothing like the XR experiences that people could have today, that it actually can accelerate change in the real world. And so we'll go to the next slide, which is what is the future direction of XR and how it could be used in health and nutrition education. So what I want to do now, and this is going to turn into a conversation back and forth between Maya and myself, is talk about some of the challenges that exist in the field of nutrition education, what makes it challenging for people to actually eat well, and then Maya's going to respond of how we could actually use extended reality to address those challenges. So if you go to the next slide, one of the first challenges in food and nutrition education is that we have a food supply that is actually filled with what are called ultra processed foods. These are foods with really, really long ingredient lists. If you look at that hungry man there, that's the actual ingredient list that is on the box. I'm sure you can't read the actual words, but if you look at that very last line in the second column, it's part 4, which is the vegetables, which is just the vegetables that they have and that are there, the carrots and the corn and the peas. That's just the vegetables. Everything else, those are even though it looks like real food, that is what it is made of. That is a really big challenge to help people to understand the challenges of this food supply with all these processed foods. So Maya, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about some ways that we could address this using extended reality.
Thank you, Pam. Yes. So what I want to show is actually that and first kind of preface it, that a number of companies at the moment are really interested in the shopping experience, and particularly in the grocery shopping experience, using mobile phones today, and discovering items within within the different aisles, or being able to be to highlight better ingredients. And one experience that I want to show, and also in addition to that, being able to really also look at recipes, help help you help consumers or people kind of like really think about what are the main ingredients and healthy ingredients in food preparation, so that it translates from the shopping experience to the cooking experience. This is one example where you can get directions on the fly. Another opportunity that I think exists is, and I'm going to briefly, hopefully this will play also here, show you an experience that is done with augmented reality in terms of being able to learn and very quickly surface the nutrition benefits of food products. So, and it's just a prototype, but imagine how quickly it is to understand that that bananas are rich on potassiums or other benefits. And while this is just an experience that is prototype with one particular item, very well known, obviously this can, especially for younger generations, this could be a very quick way to learn ingredients, to be aware of ingredients, to be able to label those ingredients, and also can be in a different ways also introduced in a more learning setting, almost in a even gamified setting. So these, I think, two opportunities that exist within this particular case.
Thank you, Maya. Those are great. I want to say too that Escape from Diab and Creature 101 that I talked about before, we're also addressing that first challenge that we had of too many ultra processed foods. because they were showing a world that had these, and then how to actually basically overcome that world. The next challenge of nutrition education is that we are living in the United States and I think many other places around the world as well, where there is really inequitable access to healthy foods. So these images that are up on the slide show some people actually live in an environment where they can shop in something like a Whole Foods with beautiful produce sections, with all of the different food that is available to them, and they can afford all of that food, and they have the ability to cook all of that food. And then the reality is many people live in communities where you're shopping in a place like this mini market. And just think of the different experiences. And we then expect everyone to be able to eat well when people have very different level of resources for getting food and very different challenges in terms of real inequities in what they can do to eat well. So Maya, I want to turn this over to you.
Yes, and this remains, I think a question that we face on a number of different levels. It's not just a question about nutrition, it's also a question in terms of the digital divide. And obviously, there is no very quick solution, and all of these questions, they're not quick solutions. But I think what's important is to have actually important ways to educate. If children indeed, or happen to be find themselves or being raised in some of those difficult environments when they're not introduced to healthy ingredients like vegetables and fruits and others, then they can be reintroduced, or make sure that things are available to make sure to be made aware how important this is through virtual reality experiences, like being able to even have your own garden, being able to grow those vegetables, to understand the ingredients, to understand how they benefit your body, to understand how they actually are critical for feeling for being healthy and remaining healthy. And I think this is important to know that that sometimes, especially when we face socioeconomical, generational, sort of consequences of that, it's still important to educate this younger generation to make better and healthier decision as they grow up and seek. And that is not that different to, I think, some of the, even in the New York City, some of the urban gardens that we have on rooftops and other places, which are introducing, I think, students to younger generation, students to really understand the benefits of using fresh ingredients and in their diet. So I think the opportunity here is more in that, well, making a virtual trip to a garden, or even cultivating your own.
Yeah, those are some really great examples. And I just want to share a really, really quick story, because I think just to understand all of those examples that Maya was just giving, which are great, is in these virtual reality worlds, what people can do is actually have experiences with all different kinds of fruits and vegetables, learn the names of them, learn how they look, learn how they act, and just think of the power of that. If you're walking in a produce section, and you're a child or an adult, and you're looking at those items and you don't know what they are because they don't have the names on them, and you've had experiences to know what they are and know the names, that can be pretty powerful. So my very quick story before we get to this navigate and advocate is, one time some of my students were teaching about 7 or 8 year olds about nutrition at an after school program in the Bronx in New York City. And there was a teenager, I think he was about 15, who was helping out. And he was like, I think it's great that the kids are learning this. And my students had brought in a head of broccoli, exactly like broccoli you would see in any supermarket anywhere, not just picked from a garden that had a lot of the leaves on it, just a regular head of broccoli from a supermarket. And the 15-year-old was next to me and said, oh my gosh, that's how broccoli comes. I've only ever seen it in pieces served to me. And so he then knew he could go into a store and he could know that. And I think in virtual reality, these kinds of experiences could really help. Okay, so what do we mean by the challenge of nutrition education? Need to navigate and advocate. So navigate, you can see, is trying to go down a path. This is that when we are trying to actually really figure out what to eat in our very challenging world, what we are often having to do is figure out how we weave through a lot of unhealthy options to find the healthier options, figure out how we have the resources to afford those healthier options. So that's kind of the best case scenario that we can often do, which is try to weave our way in, avoid some things, try to get more of other things, figure out resources to get food. Whereas then what we can also do is become advocates for change and say, you know what? We want people to be healthy. We want our planet to be healthy. We want everyone to have access to all of the healthiest foods that are going to keep them healthy. So we are going to make sure we're making changes in the world that allow everyone to have access to healthy foods. So Maya, I'm going to turn it over to you for some examples.
All right, thank you, Pam. And again, I think what's very important that we all become advocates and we all become participants. This is an emerging ecosystem, but our students are already, in actually living and interacting and engaging with virtual worlds. So it's important actually, just as education is experimenting in different places and in different modalities and different spaces, that nutrition education and the advocates for well-being and health are also present in virtual worlds. And because this is where we meet and encounter other people, and we'll even more so continue to do and to engage in more social experience and connecting. So I think it's important that really I think one of the opportunity that is to creating these new communities that will be that will exist into virtual worlds, and so people can participate regardless of their location, and share information and also feel the energy of being in supported in a network.
Thank you. So that is super important for the next challenge that we have, which is that because we have a food environment where it's actually really easy to overeat the foods that are actually basically high in caloric energy, but really low in nutrients, can be very common for people to have really negative relationships with food and eating. I have done some nutrition counseling in my career, and I can say that this is what has happened. Maybe for some of you in the audience, is you can have a really challenging relationship where it's like you feel like you're always worried about, what are you going to eat? How is it going to affect your body? Whatever. And you're spending too much negative time thinking about food. There are really a lot of great ways to start to think about food and eating that are trying to say, we need to combat this. So for example, there is something called Health at Every Size, which the focus is on health. We really want people to focus on being healthy, being metabolically healthy, being able to have your body be able to do all the things that you want to be able to do, whatever it is that you want to be good at, make sure that that can happen for your body. There's also ways to work with food that are called intuitive eating, which is knowing that you want to care for yourself and then feeling like you are okay and comfortable, believing that your body can help you choose with the knowledge of what you know to eat well, but you can work with your body. And then we can go from images like these two that are on the screen, which is, you can see these two women look like they are really struggling with food and the relationship with food, to having it where we have people that are feeling like they are celebrating and enjoying food and celebrating and enjoying eating, loving the act of eating, loving the act of growing food. Hopefully one of you will get to do that, being the winner of the raffle and winning the organic garden that you can have in your home. Loving preparing food for yourself, for family, for friends. We want to develop that. And I really believe there are lots and lots of examples in XR that can help with that. So I'm going to turn it back over to Maya.
All right. And here, actually, I want to kind of like reference a recent study, which was really about the potential of application of virtual and augmented reality technology in sensory science. And really, it's also bringing in conversational avatars that will help and also engage almost as coaches to teach healthy behavior among urban women. And some of those deploy stress management techniques, well-being, mindfulness, and through the interactions of actually these conversational avatars. Of course, there's more research to be needed in this, but it's very interesting that these trials, studies, really looking into embodied conversational agents to teach these lifestyles modifications to urban women. And women were basically randomized and put into different content around mindfulness, around stress management, around physical activity, around healthy eating, and really being able to mirror that. That content was mirrored with additional resources, not outside sort of from virtual worlds, but also like through just audio or sound on a daily basis. And it was really interesting to see the outcomes because there was a number of different techniques used, as I said, in both physical stress management, activity levels, eating patterns, all of the above. But the conclusions is that this type of interactions with are really promoting health behaviors and healthy eating among a diverse set of urban women. And of course, this also brings technology that are not just XR, but things like machine learning, things like conversational chatbots and AI. And so I think that that points into the future opportunity of having your own embodied life coach, kind of being on board with you and able to counsel you and coach you in making these decisions, and as you navigate life.
Thank you, Maya. That is great. And I love the idea. Oh, sorry, you have some more here.
Yeah, I have one additional. So I really think it's very important to kind of see, well, how do these things work? And so I want to play this video. Ooh. So what you saw on the screen is the idea of a virtual kitchen. And it's an application of augmented reality, almost, but in this case, actually with the Microsoft HoloLens or mixed reality, in terms of using that of, food preparation, and cooking in a safe environment, first in virtual reality, and then perhaps, as we mentioned, studies suggest that you can actually transfer those skills to the physical world. And so this opportunity to see a virtual kitchen, and how it allows you to interact within the space with objects, with utensils, with being able to prepare, to look at the recipe. It's really a realistic sort of cooking experience. So, and this is only the beginning.
That's right. Only the beginning. And I love that. And I love how seeing it.
Just trying to navigate here to the next slide.
It's very hard to do all of this. I so I'm happy to have you as my partner in this. So the final
not sure why we can do the next page, but
well, while you're trying to get it up, so we had our challenges of how all the ultra processed foods we have, the inequity, the need to navigate and advocate, and then really trying to have a healthy relationship with food. And all of us in the field of nutrition education believe that what we can do and how we can change that status quo is by having more high quality food and nutrition education that is giving everybody experiences where they get to grow food, cook with food, learn about food injustices, learn that it's system problems. So it's not blaming yourself for what's going on. That is what we can really do. And that is the power and the potential of nutrition education. So you can see all of these photos here, which are from different nutrition education sessions that I've been involved in, where it is, and these are all children, but it could be children and adults, are really having great experiences with food. These are all real experiences in the real world with food, and I think that those can be complemented with experiences with extended reality. So some of the ways that we can expand nutrition education are ways with extended reality that Maya is going to talk about now.
All right. So I want to just talk briefly about a project which is really like it's a project Road to Green 2020. And the creator of this project is the idea and the relationship between technologies and nutrition. And this is a prototype project that consists of an interactive booklet with interesting information about the most common foods that might be found in all family kitchens, but it's really aimed to orienting the purchases of food habits towards more sustainable approaches. So it uses AR, so you can point, your smartphone or a tablet at the booklet's pages, and then you can actually, basically meet Susie, which is a young chef, and she'll come to life. And then from the moment on, the little character will guide you through the discovery of useful information about food, about sustainability, and particularly, and about no waste. So very playful way to, with augmented reality to start introducing these concepts to young learners. And of course, this can be translated. This is one of the models, but one of addressing one sort of it can addressing sort of one thinking about cooking or about sustainability, but similar experimentation or similar projects can be designed to address a number of different opportunities in terms of food and nutrition education.
Thank you. That is great, Maya. So what we want to do in our last very few minutes is really think about how we can move forward. So what are some of the next steps and how can we get involved? I want to first say that Seiyu-san, thank you for having Maya and I get to know each other and work together on this, and for the More Family Center for Whole Grains for really thinking this through of how we can actually bring these fields together, because that's what we want. So if you go to the next slide, we really want to go from what had existed, which is some of the things that I talked about before, which again are a decade old, Escape to Diab and Creature 101, and blend those with some of these new ways of really using virtual reality, extended reality to have these different experiences. And we really believe, which is why we are here, that the time is now for bold new XR and NE nutrition education collaboration. And we really hope that this session will spark these changes. We actually are going to stay around, and we can even go, and we're going to need some help here, but go to the beach to be able to talk about this in a little while and hopefully have some real collaborations start to happen. And if we go to the next slide, there are some definite next steps that we can take. And so those can be more discussion on this, social networking, which we can start right now, and then the Society for Nutrition Education and Behavior. There is a virtual and in-person deep dive on raising reliance and resilience this year. You can go to that website or just even Google SNEB 2021, and you will get to the conference website so you can learn about it. And our conference in 2022, which is slated to take place in Atlanta, hopefully we will be able to be in rooms together by then, is actually going to have a focus on technology in nutrition education. So super exciting, and ways that we can build this together. And we would love to bring the XR community in with what we are doing and basically figure out ways together that we can bring more healthy eating to people by blending virtual reality experiences with eating well. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Pam and Maya for an exciting and amazing talk. I hope the audience had something growing in their minds, some spark and inspired ideas. So let us give them a round of applause by hitting F4. Great job. Thank you. Thank you. So I like to just take maybe 1 or 2 minutes for the audience to ask questions. You can put it in a chat or simply um, unmute yourself and ask the question. Well, I hope the question will be coming, especially even when the session ends. So I'd like to take a moment to make an acknowledgement. Maya, if you could go to the next slide, please. Uh, this event would not be possible without the support from these amazing people, our speakers, our student volunteers, our team at the Moore Family Center, as well as our sponsor, including the iLearn partners. So thank you, everyone. And I would like to invite you to now stay after the session and take this time to enter into the raffle by answering 2 questions. Let me turn to see up here. So in your left web screen, you see these 2 questions. And so please take a moment to do that. And we will close the entry at the hour. So at this time, let us give another round of applause to everyone as we close. So the main event has finished. We're going to stick around for the raffle drawing and some tours to the Innovation Garden and walking out to the beach. Please feel free to join Jonathan. But the live stream will now close. Thank you again to our videographer, Tony Cube's Studio, and the YouTube audience.